Hello and welcome back to my channel where I like to have fun with all things beauty while being critical about what I accept into my collection. Today I am doing a review of the Gourmande Girls BITTEN palette. So I picked this up at launch and I've had it for a couple weeks now, and luckily I've been buying less eyeshadow. So I feel like I've gotten to really appreciate the palettes that I do buy, which is my goal for this year. My goal is to buy less makeup in general, across the board, but my biggest weakness is eyeshadow palettes, especially from indie brands, so I'm trying this year to be a lot more considerate about the ones I do pick up. Beyond that, it's not just about the makeup, so I'm also trying to be more considerate about who I'm purchasing from. Gourmande Girls is a newer brand to me. I only have one other palette from them, but I really like their ethos. I really like the fact that they stand up for human rights, and I feel like now more than ever, that's a really big deal. So they are a brand that is really high up on my radar. What I will say with full confidence is I felt this way before anything happened. So back when I picked up their Haunted palette, I picked this up on a whim because it was on a crazy discount for something like $15. And I fell in love with this. I didn't know anything about the brand. I didn't know who they were, what they stood for, none of it. But their formula impressed me so much that I sort of dropped everything and started following them and learning more about them. So when I say this is a brand that's high on my priority list, they genuinely deliver on both quality and content. So I'm really happy about that. And I'm really happy to have another palette. So I know that it's not just this one. Like, it's not a one-off. This wasn't a fluke. Their formula is consistently good, and I can say that now, having more palettes. To get an idea of what is ideal for me, in my opinion, for matte and shimmer formulation, my favorite mattes are Natasha Denona mattes, the current formula, and my favorite shimmer formula is from Glaminatrix. So I'm saying that to sort of give some context of what I'm looking for, what my favorite types of formulas are. So if you've tried either of those brands, Glaminatrix is a smaller brand, so I'm trying to think of a more mainstream. Nothing really comes close. It's a thinner but highly, highly, highly reflective shimmer. So I like a lot of impact in my shimmers. So Glaminatrix is my #1 brand in terms of what I find impressive right now, and I would say the #2 spot is actually in tied position with a few other indie brands. So next in line could genuinely be Gourmande Girls. I like their formula that much that it might be my second favorite formula, and I personally think that's saying a lot because it's quite competitive right now, especially within the indie community. I feel like there's a lot of really, really good stuff out there right now. So as far as the formula is concerned, this absolutely delivers. Everything performed exactly as I was hoping it would. So no complaints there. The other thing that I wanted to mention is I also picked up with this order the glitter eyeshadow primer, and I definitely think this helps with creasing. I am somebody who has really never bothered to use a glitter eyeshadow primer, so I don't have a ton of experience. I can't compare this to a lot of other things, but I can say that using it with this palette and using it with the Lethal palette, I've been using this almost every day since I've gotten it. It definitely makes a huge difference when it comes to creasing over time. Initially, when I put this palette on, I don't really have any creasing problems like I have had with other shadows. But by the end of the day, I would have a little bit of creasing. When I use the glitter primer, it seems to take care of that. I don't have fallout with this palette with the primer or without. So I don't think it's a palette that's very prone to that, but the shimmers being slightly emollient, I do think, especially with some of the deeper shades, you might have an issue with creasing without a primer. One thing that I wanted to point out that I thought was really interesting in all of the photos that I saw and the reviews that I saw of this palette before it actually released was there were two shades that I wasn't quite sure of the color. So the first one was Hunted. In my opinion, it's just gray. There's no green in it. It's just a gray shade. But in countless photography, it kept looking green. And I think that that's just a trick of the eye because of color theory and what the background colors are. I think for some reason it gave it a green hue when in real life it doesn't look green at all. It's not like it looks green in real life in the pan. It doesn't. It looks gray. It swatches gray. It's just gray. But I thought that was interesting. And personally, I'm happier. I'm glad that it's gray. I prefer that to the green because I don't always feel like that looks great on my skin tone. So I'm very happy that it's gray, but I just thought it was so interesting how that came across in so many of the photos. I actually thought this gray shade was going to be similar to the Charmer palette from Unearthly. I was expecting it to be more dull and a more gray version of that, but it just goes to show how surprised I was that it wasn't even a little bit green. It's sort of irrelevant. I just thought it was interesting. The other shade that I thought was really interesting is the shade Hysteria. So when you look at that in the pan, you can clearly see it is pink and purple. There are pink flecks and purple flecks. It's not like it's duochrome and that's what's doing that. It has both pigments very clearly present. However, in some swatches, it looked like a duochrome. So it was not everybody's swatches. It sort of depended on how people did their swatches. If people did swatches that included their curve on their arm, sometimes in some photos, it appeared to have a green shift. I can say with confidence in real life, it does have a green shift and you can see it swatched on your arm. However, on the eye, it is not very perceptible. I have used this shade all over my eye multiple times, and most of the time when I do that with duochromes or multichromes, my entire eyelid is a wide enough surface to fully see the shift, and it makes it very easy to see the shift. In this case, with this shade, I could see it. Like if I went up to a mirror and I moved my head side to side, I could technically see it, but it wasn't like it was noticeable. It did not perform like other duochromes or multichromes. But I personally don't care because it's still maybe my favorite shade in this entire palette. It is stunning. It mostly comes across purple, I guess. It sort of maybe depends what you pair it with, but it is just such a stunning shade. I don't really care about the duochrome. I was just so curious to get it in my hands and see for myself if that shift was noticeable. I mean, on most people's eyelids, I didn't see a noticeable shift, but I was curious because of the discrepancy that I saw in some people's swatches. But just to clear that up in case anyone else saw that shade and was confused about it too, that's my personal experience with it. All right, so that aside, I can say objectively, this is a great eyeshadow palette. The formula is great. Everything performs the way I would hope it would. So if you like this color story, this is a great palette, no question. However, because eyeshadow palettes aren't just about the quality and performance, they're also about the color story and personal preference, I have to say this is not going to be the most used palette in my collection, just because I personally find the color story to be just a little bit limiting. Everybody's preference is going to be a little bit unique. So while I can tell you that I can look at this color story and I can easily see almost like 10 different looks, I think that this is reasonably versatile. Being so pink and purple, it's still, you can go in a lot of different directions with it. So I don't think it's that limited in terms of how many looks you can do, but for me personally, I have to be realistic about how many looks I'm going to want to do. So it's one of those things, like I have gotten palettes in the past and I have pushed myself out of my comfort zone, done a combination that I didn't think I would like, wound up loving it. It becomes one of my new favorite things to do, but I've also had palettes where I put a combination together and I'm right. I didn't think I would love it and I don't. So I feel like for me, unfortunately, there's only about 2 looks here that I really want to do repetitively. And that is mostly featuring the shades Hysteria and Slayer. So no question, those are my 2 favorite shades in the palette. I also really liked the look of Euphoria, but for some reason in execution, it never really looked as good as I had hoped, but that's a preference thing. I also really liked Mina, but that's also a shade that I feel like I need to work with a little bit more to see how I would like it best actually on my eyes. So whether it winds up being 2 looks or 3 looks, I would say that that's average for me, you know? And it's really not a bad thing. I just know that ultimately this is probably not going to be one of my most used palettes this year. That really says nothing about the palette and everything about the fact that the purpley pink look just isn't my favorite all the time. I tend to like lighter shimmers overall, so because of that, I have to be realistic with myself about how much I'm going to actually use this palette, but that doesn't mean I'm mad that I have it. I am very happy that I have it. And I do think it's a really fun theme for Valentine's Day. I've always been the sort of anti-Valentine's Day type of person, so having a collection that is a little bit off the traditional pastel-y, sickly sweet stuff, like I definitely appreciate that. So I feel like I definitely had a lot of fun with this. It's a palette that I'm gonna love reaching for anytime I do want to do a pinky purple look, and I'm very happy to have it in my collection. I will say I do feel like Haunted offered a more unique addition to my collection, so if you do happen to see this on sale, I can't recommend this palette enough. If it does have colors that you are looking for, I don't think you'll be disappointed. So I guess that's it. The only other thing I have going on today is I'm trying this blush from LYS. This was recently on GMA deals for 50% off. So I grabbed one. I picked up the shade Focused. I had a hard time. I went on Sephora and looked at the swatches, and I always have a hard time picking colors online. But I do think this is very pretty. It is quite pigmented, and actually the case is beautiful. I knew it was this light pink, but it also has like an iridescent light pink sheen on top. It's really, really very aesthetic. So I'm happy I picked that up. It's a little bit warmer of a color than I tend to go, but I actually think it goes with the purple quite well. So that is the other new product that I am trying today. And hopefully it'll be a few weeks before I have yet another palette. I am thinking about getting the Morgan Turner Valentine's Day palette. Even though I said I was done with Oden's Eye, I had both of the Angelica Nyqvist Halloween palettes, and I thought they were a lot of fun. But after using those for a period of time, I was just done. I'm over the Oden's Eye formula. I don't really love the brand. I feel like their customer service is not the best, and, you know, a bunch of things. So they were just off my radar. I wasn't going to purchase really anything from them ever again until her palette came out. I've been following Morgan for a really long time now. She was one of the first creators that I saw when I started watching YouTube, and I just think she's a sweet kid. I really do. I'm really happy for her. She comes across very genuine, very humble, very happy about this whole thing, and her excitement was kind of contagious. So I think I'm going to end up picking up the palette. I'm going to do my best to get the palette only because I always regret getting the lip products, especially from Oden's Eye. I never get on with their lip products, so I'm going to try to just get the palette. I'm going to do my best. But outside of that, I don't think that there's anything on my list. So for right now, the Oden's Eye palette should be my only purchase or eyeshadow purchase for February. So I'm hoping to keep it to about once a month, but wish me luck, spring is coming. So if you were considering picking this up, I hope this was helpful, and I hope you're having a beautiful day or night wherever you are. I love you so much, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.